Right, hello, welcome to those of you who have already joined our virtual financial aid information night. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to give it just a few minutes until 6:30 while people are logging on, so just hang tight. Looks like we've got a few more people joining us here at our live virtual information night for financial aid. Thank you for hopping on our Teams call, and we'll get started in just a few moments once everyone has the chance to log on. All right, we've got some more people joining our live virtual financial aid information night. I see we have some more people logging on. Thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you taking the time out of a beautiful evening to spend some time with us virtually. We're going to give it just another minute or two so everyone has the chance to access the virtual event. But I hope you're all enjoying this beautiful weather we're having right now. I know we certainly are at Ursuline trying to, get out there and take some walks and just enjoy it while it lasts. Okay, it looks like we've got some more people joining us. Thank you. Thank you all for logging on tonight for our virtual financial aid information session. I know y'all have busy schedules and lots of things to do, so we certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to spend with us. We're going to get started in just a minute here. I want to give everyone just another minute or two to get logged on. Sometimes it takes a minute to log on to the platform depending on what you usually use. Now we're all, of course, getting used to all of these different virtual platforms. All right, all right. So thank you all for joining us this evening. We're at about 6:31, so we'll go ahead and get started, but we'll start off a little slow so anyone still logging on has the chance to join without missing any of the information that you came here for. So I want to welcome you and say thanks for being here tonight. My name is Ashley Enyart Higgins. I'm the Director of Admissions at Ursuline. I'm also an alum of Ursuline. I graduated in 2009. Love being here and being able to work in admissions with all of the prospective families as they explore their different high school options. So tonight you're here for the virtual financial aid information night. I know this is a very important topic and I'm sure you have a lot of questions tonight. So most of the evening you'll be hearing from our finance director who oversees our scholarship and financial aid program. And she's got a lot of great information planned for you tonight. And there will be a chance to ask questions as well. So how the questions will work, if you haven't joined one of our virtual events in the past, is there is a Q&A chat option on your screen, and you can type in your questions that you have, and we will see those on the back end. No one else will see them other than us. All of the other attendees will not see them. So you can type in your questions as you have them. And then at the end of the event, we'll go through and answer as many questions as we can. So go ahead and when you think of the question, just go ahead and type it into the chat and then we'll get to it certainly at the end of the event if we can. I know we have a lot of people joining us tonight, which we're very grateful for. So if we don't have time to answer all of the questions, we will certainly be happy to have any follow-up conversations with you. We'll provide our contact information tonight in the presentation and then also in our follow-up message that you'll receive tomorrow. So thank you so much again for joining us. I think now most of the attendees have joined, so we welcome you very much. And we are going to go ahead and just start with a short video while a few people are still logging on. All right, so thank you again for joining us. And now I am going to go ahead and turn it over to our president, Ms. Ramona Payne.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know you probably had a full day between work and school, but we are really pleased that you're able to join us tonight and hope that by the end of this session, a lot of the questions that you have regarding how to invest in your daughter's education, we will be able to answer. One of the things I wanted to share with you, and you'll probably hear this as you participate in this session and other sessions, is that I really want to share with you the mission of Ursuline, which is to prepare young women for college and beyond by nurturing their soul, their intellect, their heart, and their imagination. And one of the things, the words that I think really stands out is the idea of preparing the young woman for college and beyond. And part of the way we do that here at Ursuline is really trying to make sure that there's a strong emphasis on a very rigorous curriculum, an excellent guidance and counseling department. But we also have a lot of extracurriculars and campus ministries, but all of that leads to a very well-rounded education and experience for your daughter. But that does take resources, and that's really what we wanted to talk to you about, why we feel that the investment in the education is worth it. Part of it is that it's not only to prepare them academically for college and beyond, but it's really about giving your daughter choices. And I think the idea of choice is so extremely important, because it's one thing to be prepared, but what Ursuline can do for your daughter is give her choices. And when I say choices, I can think of my own experience. When I went to college, I was someone, because I did really well in math and science, kind of made an assumption that maybe I should be an engineer or I should be a doctor. And when I got there after a year, I decided that I really loved liberal arts and business. And so a big chunk of my career was in the corporate world, and then I later switched to nonprofits. But I had a choice because I had such an excellent foundation through my Ursuline education. And that's really the benefit of the experience here. The other thing at Ursuline that I think makes it truly unique is the support of not just the community inside of the building. And when I say inside of the building, I mean staff and faculty, the teachers, the counselors, and even the way the students support each other. There is a huge support and a huge network outside of the walls of this building, away from the campus. At Ursuline, we have currently well over 8,000 alumni, and the alumni at Ursuline are just as committed to the students who are here, even though they may have graduated 5 years ago, or in some cases 50 or 60 years ago, they're still very committed. And one of the ways they show that commitment is that they support through things such as the annual fund, which we use to support tuition, because I think everyone knows, many of you are also at, private or Catholic or other schools at grade school, but we all know that tuition doesn't cover the full cost of the education. But the annual fund is one way that we try to close that gap between what the cost of the education really is and the experience that we're trying to provide and how much we want to charge for tuition. We have to balance all of those factors. So they support things like the annual fund, but at Ursuline, we also have a number of endowed funds and endowed scholarships. So what I would encourage you to think about is the potential of giving your daughter a choice by investing in her education. And I think what you'll hear tonight is that you maybe don't make an assumption at this point about whether or not the education is affordable. I mean, I benefited from scholarships, throughout my education. I've been able to give back to Ursuline and other institutions, but I think the first thing is, check and make sure that this is the right school for your daughter. Take advantage of shadow days. Take advantage of, if you have questions, asking us. But don't assume that the education isn't affordable. And so now what I'd like to do is to turn it over to Ms. Morgan McCain, and she is our Director of Finance and Operations, and she will be able to share with you kind of how we go about determining financial aid and what resources are available to support the education. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ramona. And welcome to everybody who's out there this evening, and thank you for joining us. It is good of you to give up some time this evening on a beautiful evening when it would be nice to be out for a walk at this point in time. I am the Director of Finance here at Ursuline, and I will also be your point of contact for financial aid. I am the one that reviews all the documents from FAQs, and I'm happy to answer questions as we go along of information questions you may have about filling in the form. One of the things we want to go through tonight is sort of where all of the funding comes from. There are sort of 4 different buckets per se out there of funding that are available. And we'll be discussing each one of these, but the first of this is merit scholarships, and we don't require a separate application for that. The second is our need-based financial aid, and this is all done through fax with an application deadline of November the 23rd, and this is determined by family need. And again, we're going to be going through quite a bit more detail of that. There are the EdChoice scholarships, and I'll spend a minute a little later talking about that as well. And that is determined either on school district of residence or family income. Then there are a number of outside scholarships. These are up to the families to pursue these. There's the Aubrey Rose Foundation. There are community organizations, and a lot of the parishes and grade schools have scholarships. I've seen more checks probably this year than I ever have coming from a lot of those. So there is a fair amount of support out there through other organizations. We can go to the next slide. Ashley.
All right, so I'm going to pipe in here just for a moment to touch on merit scholarships, although I will say this is not the bulk of our event tonight. So we're happy to have follow-up conversations about this as well. So for merit scholarships, as Jenny mentioned, we do not have a separate application for those. So once your daughter completes her application to Ursuline, which is due on December the 1st, you may be wondering, when can I fill it out? It should be available by early next week, our online application that you can fill out by logging into a portal that you'll be able to create an account for. So as long as she completes that application by December the 1st, and we have all of her information, then she will automatically be eligible for those merit scholarships. And this year, as many of you have heard, you know, the Archdiocese has waived the entrance test that we typically have. So that will not be a factor, obviously, in the scholarship determinations. So we will be looking at the same factors that we will consider for her admission to Ursuline, and that will be her test scores, her grades, and her written statement that she submits as part of her application. And we do encourage her to spend some time on that written statement. That will be, you know, that will be important this year. So we will review all of those things, and we will determine some you know, merit scholarships for, you know, exceptional academic performance to Ursuline.
Great, thank you, Ashley. So the next step is really talking about applying for financial aid through fax. And as you'll see on here, the link is provided, and this is available through our website as well. To go on to fax to complete the form for financial aid for this coming year. The pieces of information that you're going to need with regard to that is your 2019 tax return, your 2019 W-2 forms, and if you are a business there, any appropriate schedules that are required by fax for completing the form. And if there are any of those items that are missing, the form will be tagged as incomplete. So I will not be reviewing any forms that are incomplete. So I urge you, if you have some issue with a tax return, something, to be in touch with me if for some reason you've not filed your 2019 tax return or you have some form that's not available. I need you to reach out to me, because otherwise the application is just going to sit out there as incomplete. So next slide. So fax has a formula that most of the Archdiocese school, we all use pretty much the same table. And they have a formula they go through with regard to what the family is able to afford based on family size, family income, what they have in terms of assets, liabilities, so forth. So once those applications are all complete, they've been reviewed and verified by fax, because they do go out and actually verify the tax return. All of that information will then come to me, and I make the initial review of the financial aid applications, and then we take them to a financial aid committee that actually reviews the recommendation. Next slide. So now I'm going to bore you a little bit with an Excel spreadsheet, but this is the question that I am asked the most, I believe, is how do I know if I qualify for financial aid? And this sometimes is a really hard question to answer, but I've done a spreadsheet here for my fictional family of 3. And I'm going to start in the upper left hand where it's called taxable income. And basically what this is going to allow you to do, I've done the fictional family, but I think that you can go ahead and put your information in here and quickly determine if this is something that would benefit you or not. But in my fictional family of 3, they have the 2 sources of income that are shown here is their adjusted gross from their 1040 and 12% of their available assets, which is down in the lower left, and I'll go through that in a minute. So, but we're going to assume that this family has a total family resources of $85,000. Then we go down to the right where they can deduct their household expenses. In the upper right, there are what are called allocated expenses, which are determined by a table from the labor statistics. It changes every year. I'm going to ask Ashley to include it in the packet that's going to be emailed to families so that you can take a look at this table. It's based on the number of members in the family, your adjusted gross income. So you can take a look to see where you're going to fall in this. But so for my fictional family of 3, I have pulled the appropriate numbers for the food, apparel, utilities, and transportation. The state and local taxes, Social Security, and federal taxes are all coming direct from either the 1040 or the W-2. So you can see that the allocated expenses for this family total $45,675. The actual expenses are numbers that you will be providing on the fax form. And so for primary residence, this is either your rent payment or mortgage payment. This is an annual number. Vehicle payments, they will ask you to list the make and model of the vehicle that you have and any payments that you have on that. You can use that as a deduction. The vehicle insurance premiums, if you're self-employed and you're paying for health insurance premiums, if you've still got children in daycare, those are deductible expenses for your actual expenses, or what they call their core expenses. There are what they call discretionary expenses, which for purposes of fact are not included as allowable expenses. And those are home equity payments, credit card minimum payments, student loan payments, other loan payments that you may have, charitable contributions, college tuition. Sometimes there's elder care. Sometimes families have an elderly parent living with them. So in this particular case, my fictional family has $22,200 in discretionary expenses, which are not included in the calculation for house expenses. So the total of the allocated expenses and the actual expenses equals $75,165, which I am then deducting from the family's resources of $85,000. So after the core expenses, the family would have a remainder of $9,835. FAQs considers that half of that amount is available to pay towards tuition. So that would be $4,918. If we go next, the next box is where you would enter the tuition, and this would be for all children attending private schools. So in this case, they would only have one child, and I deducted the $14,175, which is Ursuline's tuition for this year. But if you would have children in other schools, this would be the total of the tuition that you're paying for all children. So then we come down to family income after tuition expenses, and provided that this number is negative, this would then be the amount that FAQs would calculate that would be that would be the need for this particular family. So in this case, it's $9,258. I will say that we don't adhere strictly to this, just because some families have a huge debt load in terms of they may be making student loan payments for themselves. They may have a student in college that they're trying to pay for. So we do look at some extenuating circumstances and where this family might fall. So the $9,258 would be the minimum award that we would give in this particular case. So I do want to go back to the assets, because often people ask me what's included and how much is included. So in the lower left, we have the assets, and they include cash, checking, and savings, stocks, bonds, and CDs, and anything that's contributed to a 529 plan. We do not calculate in any of your retirement savings, although that number is asked for. That does not go into the calculation. So in this particular case, the family's total assets is $17,000. There is another table, and again, that's going to be provided in the email that comes to you, that allows, this is used in the FAFSA form too. If you have any students who are in college, you may have seen the same thing. This protected asset number varies from anywhere from about 5,000 up to about 7,500. But based on this family, their protected assets are $6,000. So the assets available for contribution to the family resources is $11,000, and the percentage of that we take, or that is factored in, is 12%. So for this family, $1,320 is added to the adjusted gross up on the first line to come up with the total family resources. So I hope that didn't bore everybody to death, and I'm happy to answer questions when we get to the end about that. But I thought this was important because you can basically take this and plug in your own numbers, and I think readily determine whether you qualify or not. The only other thing I want to say about that is that you may end up with a positive number and you think, well, I won't qualify. I do want you to understand that there are sometimes extenuating circumstances, and FAQs does have a place for that on the application form, and I encourage you to give me as much information as you're comfortable with. Possibly the adjusted gross from the 1040 is based on something from 2019, and now somebody's unemployed. I won't know that unless you tell me that in the extenuating circumstances. So your family resources may be well overstated when in fact one person's working where two had been before. So I do encourage you to give me as much information in that box as you can when you get to that point. So I think we can go on to the next slide, Ashley, and then I'm happy to come back to that one as we get questions. So I think that this question's really one I just really talked about. Not sure if you'll qualify for financial aid and should I still apply. I think using the spreadsheet that I just gave you gives you a first blush at looking at whether or not you would qualify, and then looking at your extenuating circumstances. I encourage everyone to feel free to apply. There is a fee for doing that. But I don't think anyone should be discouraged from doing that. Next slide. What if I'm self-employed? This is just going to require a few more forms for you. Self-employment depends on what it is, whether it's, you're an individual, you're an S Corp, you're an LLC, depending on what forms you file, those forms will be requested by FAQs. And again, I encourage you to get them uploaded, because if you don't, then the form will be incomplete. Next slide. Will tuition payments for my children who attend other schools be taken into account? Yes, absolutely. That appeared in that top left-hand corner of that Excel spreadsheet. where, again, you include all of the tuition for all of the children attending any K through 12 private school. Our student loan payments taken into account, and what about credit card debt? The first answer to that is no. But again, I'm trying to look at each application separately, take into account the family circumstances, what they're trying to do, how many children they have in private school, who's in college. So again, it's important to put that information on, but on the first round where FAQs does the calculation, that is not taken into account. Next. Do you have to complete the FAQs application for merit-based scholarships? The answer to that is no. You get off the hook on that one. I think Ashley had given you the parameters again for applying or receiving a merit-based scholarship. And do we have fees in addition to tuition? Yes. When your daughter would be a senior, there's a graduation fee and a Kairos fee. And then with athletics, there is a fee to play sports. I think it's somewhere around $200 to $250 per season. So and that is not included in the tuition fee, and it's not payable on the FAQs form either. Those would be due directly to the athletic department. The Kairos fee and the graduation fee would be included in the billing that would come. Next. And when will I find out if you've qualified? Well, the applications are due on the 23rd of November. So if you filed it on the last day, it usually takes FAQs probably about a week to verify all of the information. So we will be looking at this in early to mid-December, and we will have determined financial aid at the same time that we determine admissions for next year. So all of that information will all be sent in a packet at the same time. Next. Okay, to kind of switch gears and talk about EdChoice scholarships. I know last year this was a pretty hot topic because things were changing rapidly with this program. So for those of you who are familiar with it, there are really two buckets. The EdChoice Traditional, which is based on your school district of residence, and that allows a $6,000 payment for each high school if they are part of that district and they are an EdChoice high school. Often there will be different schools in a district that may not be EdChoice eligible. It just depends on the ranking by the state of Ohio, how they turn out. But for example, in Cincinnati Public, everybody ends up putting down the failing high school because there are choices there. And so those who are residing in CPS all get the $6,000. Then the family is responsible for the remaining tuition unless they qualify for EdChoice Low Income. And EdChoice Low Income is basically the same as EdChoice Expansion, that it's based on the family income that has to be 2% or less, or 2%, excuse me, I can't talk, must be 200% of the poverty line or below. And if the family qualifies based on that, then they would be EdChoice Low Income eligible. We would receive the $6,000 and the family would not be responsible for any additional fees at that point in time. The EdChoice Expansion is based solely on the family income and again must be below 200% of the poverty line. The school district of residence is irrelevant. So then if the family qualifies, again, the school receives $6,000 from EdChoice and the family is not responsible for any remaining tuition. And all of this is all governed by the state of Ohio. And last year it was in flux up until the very last minute. Actually, it even got delayed. The application deadline got delayed even further. I don't think any of us has any idea if there are going to be any changes this coming year, but just know that you know, it is up to the legislature with the state of Ohio what happens with this program. But for now, we don't have any additional information. Next slide. So again, these outside scholarships, it's important if your child is attending, you know, the grade school, church, or other community organizations to reach out and ask about all of these different scholarships. The Aubrey Rose Foundation, there are many community organizations, Rotary clubs, things of that nature, the Fund for Independent Schools, the parish scholarships. So don't be afraid to go out and research these. You know, I've had families this year that have had, you know, funding coming from 2 or 3 sources, and you know, it might end up being a couple $1,000s, which is really helpful. Next slide. This is you, Ashley.
All right, I'll jump back in here for some of the deadlines, and I see lots of great questions coming in too. So next up, we'll be able to answer all of your questions that are rolling in. But I did just want to share some of these deadlines for the class of 2025. I believe most of you here on this event are current 8th grade families, but any of the 7th or younger families as well, you know, these timelines are generally similar from year to year. So for the class of 2025, current 8th graders, that financial aid application through FAQs is due on November 23rd. As Jenny mentioned, you know, make sure you have all your documents ready to go, because it just makes it a lot simpler when you're going to upload that. So we recommend doing it, you know, before November 23rd, but that is the due date. And then on December the 1st is when the application for admission is due, as I believe I mentioned at the beginning. And that online portal will be available next week, and your daughter can, you and your daughter can both log in, create an account there, and complete her application. And that's all she has to do to be eligible for merit scholarships, is to complete that application by December the 1st. And then the decision letters are mailed in January. So this is pretty much common for all of the Catholic high schools in Cincinnati. We all try to follow the same schedule. So the decision letters will be mailed on January 13th this year, and that is when you will find out about your daughter's admission status, as well as any scholarship and financial aid offers that she may have received. And then January 27th is registration day. So that is when, for all of the Catholic high schools, that is when students are allowed to begin actually enrolling in the class. So you'll have made your decision by then. And on that registration day, we can do it all online at this point, all of the contract, and there is a tuition deposit as well that is required at that point in time. And that all happens on January 27th. So those are, you know, just some of the timelines to keep in mind. And now I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the additional questions that are coming in. So I'll go ahead and answer a couple of them that are sort of in my area, and then I'll turn it back over to Jenny for a few others. So one question, are applications rolling? So no, we consider all applications that are received by December 1st. So basically that first batch, which we would like everyone to apply at that point in time. We consider those all at the same time. If there are, you know, the occasional late applicants in the spring, you know, it depends on if we still have room in the class or not, whether we'll be able to consider that applicant. So we highly, highly encourage everyone to take care of that in the traditional time frame. Let's see. Are more preference given to Catholic students for the merit scholarships than for non-Catholic students? No, everyone is considered equally for that, all applicants. And another question about merit scholars, or I apologize, about financial aid and acceptance. Are the girls accepted before financial aid is determined, or is acceptance based on the financial need of the family? And no, our admissions review is need blind, so we do not look at the financial aid application. The admissions review committee is completely separate from that financial aid review committee at that point in time, even though they've all been received by then. The finance group is beginning to review financial aid, and then we are reviewing admission. And then once those admission decisions are made, that is when we finalize the financial aid awards. So no, the acceptance is not dependent at all on financial need. And let's see, do we have a list of any outside scholarships that are commonly awarded? We don't necessarily have a list. I will say that the Aubrey Rose Foundation is a common one. So you should definitely look that up. They award a lot of $1,000 scholarships, I believe, typically to students attending various Catholic high schools around the city. We do, as I believe Jenny mentioned, also we get a lot of scholarships from grade schools, from parishes, from community organizations. So we would just encourage you to really sort of ask around in the various communities that you're involved in, and you just never know what sort of an opportunity might be there. A lot of the different churches, grade schools, different community organizations, they might offer what may be a somewhat small scholarship, but as Jenny mentioned, they do certainly add up, and they're very, very helpful. All right, and I got one more question that just came in. How will it work this year with no HSPT and scholarships? So the HSPT was the entrance test that was previously used, the high school placement test that has been waived this year by the Archdiocese due to COVID. So we will be considering the same components for merit scholarships that we will consider for admission, which are grades, standardized test scores, and the written statements that the students will submit. All right, so now I've got some more questions for Jenny. So let's see. I'll just kind of keep them coming and you can just answer them as they come.
Okay.
So first question, how many years does the financial aid history go back to determine financial need?
It's really just 1 year. It is the prior year's tax return.
Okay. I think you already answered this, but just to reiterate, I think the question came in before you answered it. If a family situation has changed significantly in 2020 compared to their 2019 tax filing, does the school have a mechanism to take that into consideration?
We do, and that's through the extenuating circumstances box that is located on the fax application.
Excellent. Let's see. Oh, if this is a great question and one we definitely get. I should add that to our frequently asked questions for next year. If divorced, do both parents fill out fax?
If both parents are financially responsible for the tuition, then both parents do need to fill out the fax application.
Okay. And can I apply for financial aid in later years? So is it just freshman year, or do you have to apply later as well?
No, your circumstances could change and you could apply, junior year, senior year. Every year is a fresh start with regard to financial aid.
All right, and following up on that, a similar question. So if you completed a fax application in the year 2020 in our current year with your 2019 tax returns, what do you complete a new application the next year?
You do actually complete another application, but you should have a login from the prior year. And if you can't remember that, fax is usually very helpful in getting you that information, so that there's a history out there. So you'll just be adding this application on top of the one from the prior year.
Okay, great. A couple of EdChoice questions. Where can we find out if our district is considered failing or is on that EdChoice qualifying list?
Okay, I think we're going to include that list with the email that is going to go out, but it is on the Ohio Department of Education website. So if you go there and kind of Google around and look, but it is listed there. If you can find EdChoice there, you can find the list of districts that are currently eligible.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we would encourage you to, continue checking that website for the most up-to-date information, because as we mentioned earlier, it has been known to change. And then another EdChoice question, was the EdChoice program suspended due to COVID?
No, there were no changes to that program at all due to COVID.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, I think we have a couple more merit scholarship questions that I can answer. Some questions just surrounding generally acceptance rates, things like that. Got a couple of questions along those lines. So our acceptance rate is typically about 80%. That's about an average, but we do, we look at the pool of candidates holistically each year. So there's not an exact number that we are, once we hit it, we are not willing to accept anymore. We're looking at the whole pool and whether we feel those students are, a good fit for Ursuline. And about merit scholarships, about, how many students receive them, I will say that we do have varying levels. So there's a question, are they all large scholarships, or are there, some smaller ones available? We do have varying levels that range from, a $1,000 scholarship up to, a much more significant piece of the tuition. They are, Ursuline is a school that attracts girls who love to learn, and we attract some really talented students. So with that, we have so many applicants each year who truly are, deserving of merit scholarships, but just because of the pool of applicants that we are receiving, unfortunately, there are a lot of really bright, wonderful young women, all of the young women who are, who are attending Ursuline, but there is a limited number of merit scholarships. So it is fairly limited. It depends, from year to year on the overall pool. And the standardized tests that we are using for merit scholarships, we will be looking at any testing that your daughter has done. We recognize that, we have students who come from over 40 different grade schools, Catholic schools, public schools, private, non-Catholic schools, all sorts of different types of schools. So, and all of those different schools, of course, often they have different standardized testing that they give and require of their students. So we will look at everything that your daughter has done. It won't be one specific test that we're looking for. And like I said, that will be a very holistic review done by the admission review committee of all elements of the student's application. Okay. All right, so it looks like we actually, I think, answered a lot of your questions already, which is great. So we actually might be able to finish a few minutes early here. So if anyone has any last minute questions, please send them in, or if I accidentally missed your question, I apologize. We had quite a few coming in all at once there. And also, do always feel free to reach out to us at any time. You can contact me. My email address is ahiggins@ursulineacademy.org. You most likely received an email you've probably received emails from me before. You can also contact Jennifer McCain directly, and she'd be happy to speak with you, or reach out to me and I can put her in touch with you with more in-depth questions that you may have regarding financial aid. And I did want to make you aware also that we have another virtual event coming up soon on October 6th, and that is the Case for All Girls Education. So I highly encourage you to attend that. Your daughters might want to join for that one as well. I don't know how many daughters are watching right now, but some of the details of the finance might have not been the most exciting for them. But I think this Case for All Girls Education will be really a nice chance for us to share with you why we believe in the benefits of all girls education for young women specifically. So we'll be sharing a lot of information at that. And then we do also have our shadow days available, which I think most people are probably aware of by now, because those registrations are filling up. I believe all of our October dates are full at this point, but we still have plenty of dates available in November as well. So we look forward to having, your daughter shadow in person if she can. We also have a virtual option available. So lots of options to get to know Ursuline as she's exploring her different options. And finally, I do want to remind you all that, if you'd like to come for a tour of the school at any point, I'm happy to schedule that with you individually. So just feel free to reach out about that. Okay, just two other quick questions that came in I want to answer before we sign off. Which grades will we be considering? Is it just 8th grade? How far back does it go? We look at records from 6th through 8th grade. So that is what we always, take into consideration for admission. So we recognize that, the end of 7th grade was a little interesting for everyone. The end of this past school year was certainly a challenge. So we know that. We'll take that into consideration. And then for 8th grade, we usually ask that the schools send us their grades after that first quarter, so that we at least have their first quarter or first trimester, depending on which system they use. And then just another question about merit scholarships and which standardized tests. So we will look at all and any standardized tests that your daughter has taken. Different schools require different types of tests. So a lot of the Catholic schools require Iowas, which is great. So we'll definitely consider that as one element, just one element of that application. So it's just one piece. So don't fret if you're worried she doesn't have the right test, or if she hasn't taken a certain Iowa test or whatever it is. We will work it out, and we'll make sure that each applicant is fairly reviewed. And another question, just how many students will be accepted? So we typically, and this is an average, accept about 80% of applicants. That's been the average over the past, 4 to 5 years. But we look at that entire pool of applicants. So that can change. It might be a great pool, and maybe this year, it's a higher average. It just depends on the overall pool of students. Okay, and one more question I definitely want to just make sure I'm answering this. Are merit scholarships blind to FAQs applications? Okay, this is a good question. So the way it works is we award the merit scholarship. We decide, what we're going to award, and then if you would also be receiving a financial aid award, then that is added to it sometimes, and it depends on the amounts and what they total up to be. So I'm actually going to let Jenny talk a little bit more specifically about that.
Right, we don't stack those. We will look at the total need of the family, and we will award the merit-based scholarship first, and then any need that is not met, then we would do through financial aid. I think the other thing that I forgot to mention earlier too is that through either the merit scholarships or financial aid, the most that we fund is 80% of the tuition. We do feel that families need to participate in the financial aspect of their daughter's education. So again, the most that we will cover is 80%, which this school year is $11,340.
And Jenny, do you want to answer this next question that just came in as well about any scholarships available for minority students?
Right. We do have some specific scholarships we do have some need-based ones, and then other ones that are specific for minority students through some of our endowed scholarships. So there are certainly those available.
Okay. All right. Fabulous. So I believe that is actually all of our questions, which is great. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight virtually, and please do let us know if you have any follow-up questions that you think of, later. And then we will be sending out an email tomorrow to you all with the recording of this event, as well as a few of those additional documents that Jenny mentioned, so that you can read more in depth about the FAQs application and some of the different documents that are required, and you can make some of those estimations on your own. And we will also send you a copy of the slides as well. I think it might be helpful for you to have that schedule, that sample table that Jenny shared with you as well. So I am going to go ahead and, say good evening, but I certainly hope that we get to see all of you in person sometime very soon. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you and your daughters at Ursuline in the very near future.